So what is the general progression of cancer? So typically what begins to happen is you get a single cell that gets a mutation that can lead us down a cancerous line. This is typically considered a proto-onco stage. This means we're sort of before cancer, but we get a mutation that begins to develop. And then once you get a mutation in one cell, then those cells, they're going to undergo mitosis, and you're going to get identical cells with that mutation. Now, this is an uncontrolled growth at this time, but we do have a mutation that is in this cell. As it undergoes mitosis, it's now in this cell. As these undergo mitosis, it will pass it on, and it'll keep going. After a while, mutations will accumulate. We will get more than just a single mutation. It can take sometimes as little as 2 mutations in order for a process to lead to a cancer. And we're especially concerned about those genes that control cell growth. If you have a regulation of your cell growth so that it progresses in a normal fashion, if those get disrupted, that's when we can get uncontrolled cell growth. So we start off with a single mutation. We start a line of cells. In those cells, some lines will begin to accumulate even more mutations. At some point, we knock out those regulators of cell growth. We disrupt those cell growth genes. Once we disrupt those cell growth genes, we now have the uncontrolled cell growth. This is the beginnings of our benign tumor. It's not a cancer, though, until it begins to spread. After we begin to get uncontrolled cell growth, and then it begins to metastasize, move to other places in the body, you now have a malignant tumor. And the way that this cell goes about metastasis, so metastasis, metastasize, metastasis is the noun, metastasize is the adjective. What'll happen is you'll have, I'll go ahead and use red to represent a blood vessel. Remember, our circulatory system is really good for moving things around. And if you have cells that are mutated, so let's say that that's our uncontrolled growth cells. Here's our normal cells, or non-mutated ones. You begin to get a proliferation of cells. At this point, this is where you have is a benign tumor. If you remember in your cytoskeleton, you have actin proteins that are near the cells. They allow cells to move, and eventually one of these cells can migrate over next to a blood vessel, or it also could be a lymph vessel. Remember, both of these systems are traveling throughout the body. It will then secrete enzymes that will break down that lining of the blood cell. Let's use the black. So enzymes secreted by the cancerous cell, the potentially cancerous cell, they will break down the vessel wall. Now, my cell can enter the blood vessel. Once you are in the blood vessel, you are now in that plasma, and that plasma will allow you to then move along. After a while, you will migrate back over towards the border of a blood vessel. You'll secrete some more enzymes. You'll break down that blood vessel wall again, or a lymph vessel wall again. You will then migrate back into a tissue, and here we are. We have now moved our tumor from one place to another. This is metastasis. And then since we have mutations that allow us to go through uncontrolled cell growth, you can begin to create a second tumor.